I was about to say that we're delighted to be in Paris, but hopefully we'll get the chance another time to see you in person. I've prepared the presentation with my colleague, Ms. Gro Holst-Volden, who is also in the room here with me, and she will be happy to take any questions afterwards along with me if you've got any after our presentation. What we'll be talking about today is, first of all, going to say a wee bit about the concept research program here at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology that we are based. We're going to say a little bit about what makes for a successful project to provide a bit of a background as to why and how we're carrying out ex-post evaluations in Norway. And we're going to give you a little taster of some of the results from the evaluations that we are responsible for. Please note that we haven't got time to go into detail on the results, but hopefully we'll give you some insight into our evaluation model. And the presentation doesn't cover the full range of evaluations carried out in the transport sector in Norway. There's other agencies and organizations that also carry out evaluations, but we're going to focus primarily on the evaluations carried out by us. And me and Gro, we come from the concept research program, and we were established almost 20 years ago by the Ministry of Finance, who continue to finance our research. And we do research on the largest government projects in Norway, with some exceptions, not health and not energy. And a large part of our research and evaluation activities are on the transport sector. I think that road and rail project make up over 50% of the project portfolio that we're studying. We're based at the university in Trondheim, and we do both research and evaluation. Evaluation isn't research per se, but the results from the evaluations can feed back into better ex ante appraisal methodologies, and that's something that we're also involved in developing. And in order to evaluate, we need to have some sort of idea what success in a project looks like. And the reason that why we're carrying out projects is to deliver something to someone. We often get the impression that once we build a new road, everything is fine and well, and our quality of life and prosperity will increase. But there's a range of issues why road building or rail investment might be necessary or not. But the main motivation is obviously some sort of positive user effects. In the short term, the project should be delivered efficiently within the targets for time, cost, and quality. After the project is delivered, hopefully the project will result in positive user effects. But the most important thing is the long-term perspective, the strategic perspective, in that the project should fit in with overall strategy and deliver benefits to society at large. But also, obviously, transport planning and appraisal doesn't happen in a vacuum. We get our finances from our political superiors, and political goals also matter, but may not always be formulated explicitly in the business cases for all projects. A simple two-dimensional illustration of project success could be as follows. Obviously, the ideal solution is to choose the right project concept and to deliver it efficiently. But on the other hand, there's a lot of examples of good project or good project concepts that have been delivered poorly in the short term. I've often read academic articles on projects that were supposedly failures because the final costs turn out to be 20% higher than estimated, and the traffic forecast for the first year was 15% below forecasts. But in my opinion, that's a gross oversimplification. It's much worse to choose the wrong project concept, and obviously the worst of all is to choose the wrong project concept and to deliver it inefficiently. So it's better to carry out a good project poorly than a bad project well. At the same time, success may be difficult to anticipate or measure, even in the medium term. Take the Eiffel Tower, for example. What was the purpose of that big steel construction when it was first built? And I think that a lot of people scratched their heads even in the decades after as to what the tower were supposed to deliver. But in the decades after the Second World War, it developed into one of the most visited tourist attractions in the world. And this illustrates that it may take time, a long time, before we can conclude whether a project has been a success or not. And at the same time, there are, of course, different measures of success. In a perfect world, cost-benefit analysis would capture all relevant effects of projects. And I think it was you, Roger, yesterday who described this CBA as the workhorse of transport appraisal. And it may be a workhorse, but it's no racehorse, and you won't win the Grand National of Appraisal with CBA because there's a lot of. I'm a great promoter of CBA myself, but I'm the first to recognize that there's a lot of weaknesses with CBA, and it doesn't cover all impacts that may be relevant to all stakeholders and society. There's equity concerns like we discussed yesterday. Environmental effects have very, very limited impact on net present value. Even in today with the climate crisis, you often find projects which result in large increases in CO2 emissions and be at odds with central policy objectives and yet have a very high net present value. You've got the discounting of negative future effects, massive negative climate effects 50 years ahead of us will have very little impact today because of discounting. There's the paper that Morten Skåne will present later today on the uncertainty of input variables. And if you compare the appraisal of individual projects, even they will vary enormously over time. So it's no wonder that decision makers become frustrated and confused when they see that the net present value can differ by several 100% just year by year, depending on input assumptions. And that's the reason why in Norway, as in a lot of other countries, value for money as measured by the cost-benefit analysis have had little or even no impact on actual project selection. In reality, decision makers may be more interested in other impacts than those measured by the CBA. Economists might think that it's the effects in the left hand of this figure, those that are measured by the CBA, that matters to decision makers too, such as user effects, changes in journeys, safety effects, etc. While the idea or the rationale of carrying out transport projects is to achieve something outside the transport sector. And a lot of research over the last 10 to 20 years have been devoted into the exploration of so-called wider economic impacts, productivity impacts, net impacts for the economy as a whole. While in my opinion, what most decision makers and stakeholders are mostly concerned about are the regional impacts or local impacts. And those impacts may, in most cases, be gross impacts for the economy and not net impacts, meaning that they're more likely to be transfers between regions rather than additional to the whole economy. And in today's world, with debating issues such as leveling up the economy, transport is more routinely looked at as a vehicle for promoting growth in specific regions rather than promoting net economic welfare for the nation as a whole. And in that respect, CBA may be a poor tool. All large projects have objectives, and in the short term, we usually have objectives such as travel time savings, improving safety, and only some of the objectives might be measured by the cost-benefit analysis. And when we look at business cases for large projects, we often find objectives such as increasing the population in selected areas, increasing the number of businesses, jobs, house building, and leveling up the economy, to use a current buzzword. And this has especially been the case in Norway, where a lot of the economic activity takes place in remote areas and in industries such as oil, gas, fishing, aquaculture, shipbuilding, etc. And these are industries where the resources are fixed in location and where access to national and international markets can be crucial. That means that the main motivation for transport schemes is often a strategic one, and diverting firms and economic activity from one area to another is often the intention of government policy. And to invest in projects that maximizes net present value might increase spatial disparities rather than reduce them. And therefore, project evaluations must cover all the aspirations of decision makers. And from a political perspective, CBA only scratches the surface of what we're trying to achieve, or what the needed information to make informed decisions. CBA doesn't include all impacts that are interesting to and relevant to decision makers. And the definition of success could not be narrowed down to a single figure. There is a number of goals and objectives ex ante that ex post evaluations should be mapped against. So the message that we have tried to communicate so far is that the reason we carry out evaluations is that we can assess project success from a broader perspective than can be measured by CBA alone. And just to give you a little background on the ex ante appraisal of large government projects in Norway, the current threshold for this governance model is about €100. And the starting point is the appraisal of different conceptual solutions to a problem, real or not. And the conceptual appraisal includes an analysis of needs, a discussion of goals, and an economic assessment of different solutions, including a traditional CBA. And the conceptual appraisal is then scrutinized by external consultants in QA circle in the figure. And project then moves on to the pre-project stage, which includes detailed planning according to the Planning and Building Act, and before government can take a final decision as whether to allocate funds for the project or not, it must be scrutinized by external consultants once again. So what I'm trying to say here is that quality up front is essential for ensuring project success ex post. So this means that ex ante appraisal may be a long drawn out affair that takes many years, both rational and less rational processes. And from start to final decision, it may take 8 to 12 years, depending on how large the project is and how complex it is and how fast the appraisal and decision-making process goes. And obviously throughout the process, a lot of project proposals and projects are discarded for various reasons. And in addition to the overall governance activities as described in the last slide, we also have extensive planning requirements according to the Planning and Building Act, which includes both the municipal sector planning and local zoning plan, which is necessary to get final planning permission. So the front-end phase is crucial to project success. There's several studies that have shown that the reason why projects fail is because of choices taken before actual project implementation. As I said quite a few slides back, it's better to have the right project and deliver it poorly than have the wrong project and deliver it well. What I've described is a system of ex ante appraisal that involves a lot of time and resources. But in Norway, as in most other countries, I would assume ex ante and ex post efforts do not match each other. But on the other hand, we do have a decent system for ex post evaluation that I will go on describing in the remaining slides. There's obviously been a number of single studies on the accuracy of cost estimates, traffic forecasts, etc. I've published studies like that myself, and I'm currently doing a study of delivery time and delays in projects. However, single metric studies like that doesn't measure project success. And the Public Roads Administration also has a program for ex post benefit cost analysis, which only includes the monetized impacts, but it's a useful tool for identifying weaknesses in their ex ante appraisal methodologies. And then us in the concept research program. In addition to our other activities, we do 2 to 3 evaluations per year. We do some in-house, we do some in collaboration with others such as consultancies and research institutions, and some we contract out. And so far we've carried out 34 project evaluations since 2012. That's about, I'd say, 20% maybe of the projects that have been completed according to the projects that have been planned and completed within the governance framework that I presented. And that allows us to do some meta-evaluations of sectors. We're in the process of publishing a meta-evaluation of building projects. And next year we'll hopefully do a meta-evaluation of transport projects. And the framework for evaluation that we use is a framework that is based on an evaluation framework originally developed by the OECD. We measure first the efficiency of project delivery, whether the project was able to deliver the project according to targets for time, cost, and quality. Next is the effectiveness of project, whether the project was able to deliver the intended user effects. All projects obviously have other impacts outside the direct user effects, could be wider impacts for society, and also negative impacts, which are important to survey in a broad ex-post evaluation. It's obviously important to consider ex-post whether the project is still relevant and how it fits in with overall society, and whether the project will continue to meet the needs of users and society in a longer term. And that relates to the sustainability criterion, which also includes an assessment of environmental sustainability. And the framework is used on projects in different sectors, and it's standardized to allow for comparisons between projects and across sector. It's a goal-oriented methodology, but no goals are worth achieving at any cost, and therefore it also includes a traditional assessment of benefits versus costs through a CBA. So the evaluation framework measures both operational success, the delivery of project, tactical success, whether the project has been able to deliver goals effectively, and strategic success. So it's very unlikely that you will find a project that scores perfectly on all criterions, which illustrates that success is a heterogeneous measure, and different stakeholders may have different perspectives of what makes for a successful project. And what's important here is that the results or the ex-post evaluations are mapped against goals formulated in the original business case of the project. So there is a link between ex ante and ex-post evaluation. And evaluation also includes both monetized and non-monetized impacts, and an impact for different groups in society, so that hopefully we're able to say something about the equity effects of projects. And no presentation of ex-post evaluation is complete without some results from the evaluations. Let's first look at cost performance, because there's a lot of interest in costs and cost overruns and underruns, and the reason why is because it's easily measurable compared to, say, sustainability. The cost performance in Norwegian transport projects, this is a sample of 58 road and rail projects that we have been completed according to the governance model that I described. The mean deviation from the P50 estimate is around 4%, and the median is 1%. It's a slight right skew, so there is certainly room for improvement, but it's nothing like the results reported in some international studies, and that only illustrates that you can't really compare the results of projects across countries, sectors, and projects delivered in different time periods and within different frameworks for planning and delivery. Looking at the other results, we see that road projects are generally more successful than rail projects. The rail projects were less effective in achieving their goals for the number of journeys, travel time savings, etc. But rail projects also had more ambitious goals relating to economic development, modal shift, etc. And their goal achievement in many cases relied not only in the investment in rail infrastructure, but also in further investment in the rest of the rail network, timetabling, new rolling stock, the development in road improvements, the price and availability of parking, etc. So there's a lot of things outside the control of the railway administration, and that's the reason why the evaluation of the rail projects showed that the projects were poor value for money. They were relatively poor at delivering user effects. But in the long term, the evaluations concluded that investment in the rail network was necessary to achieve sustainability objectives relating to climate change, modal shift, etc. And we've recently completed an evaluation of 2 railway projects close to Oslo, where there had been improvements in the railway lines further out. And the 2 railway projects in questions were the last 2 pieces in a big puzzle. And suddenly that resulted in a sudden release of positive user effects. So it illustrates that the railway is a much more complex network than the road network. And today, I've covered most of what's on this slide anyway. Today, there's the railway administration has a lot more emphasis on benefit management than they had 10, 15 years ago. Back then, they often started with, let's build something and see what happens. These days, they think more, these are the benefits that we want to achieve. What do we need to do to achieve them? It might be infrastructure, but it might be something a lot simpler and cheaper. In Norway, as in a lot of other countries, there's been a lot of interest in potential wider impacts from road and rail schemes. And some of the evaluations have had a go at trying to measure potential both regional and national effects from the investments in new transport infrastructure. And they found that some municipalities and towns and cities experience positive development impacts and some negative. So it's mostly transfers of economic activity between regions. We found that communities close to cities that become within a commutable distance because of improved transport, because of improved road and rail lines, they often get benefits, and there is no evidence of net benefits for the whole economy. So there's a lot of people, stakeholders, organizations that have assumed that ex-ante results from studies from densely populated areas, such as the UK, could be transferable to Norway, but all the evidence from our ex-post evaluations suggests that they cannot. And we haven't presented details of the individual evaluations, nor have we discussed the practical challenges of carrying out the evaluations or the use of the evaluations in practical appraisal and decision making. But we have argued that that partial measures of success, such as net present value or the internal rate of return, may be too narrow, and that ex post evaluation should be based on a broader set of success criteria. And evaluations, both ex ante and ex post, must address the concerns and policy aspirations of decision makers. Just insisting that CBA is the be all and end all of appraisal is arrogant. And if transport professionals continue to do that, we risk becoming obsolete. And that was the message that we wanted to convey to you today. Thank you.